Are we streaming? We are now. I don't know how long I've been streaming for. Alright, guys. So, I haven't told anyone. I just thought I would do a quick market scan. So I'm going to have a run through the markets. Big thing tonight, FOMC meeting minutes. There's definitely questions of stimulus that are creating tensions. Trump is kind of messing with stuff at the moment where basically the Fed is saying you need to think about stimulus, and the Democrats are saying we're ready to sign on stimulus, and Trump is saying no, hold on stimulus, because he's a bit bitter and sour at the moment because it looks like he's getting handed his ass by the in the run up to this election. So anyway, and then he was all kind of like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll pay the stimulus check, so it's got to have my name on it, so people think it's my money that I'm giving to them, and I just don't think they're going to agree to that. So basically the problem is that Trump is the problem. He's just kind of like, I guess I don't know what that expression is for that, whatever it is that's kind of messing up the machinery at the moment, but that's creating a bit of a problem. So FOMC is basically a bit more of a factor because there are definite economic slowdown in certain areas. So I would just be aware of that. That could create some disruption this evening. But otherwise, let's go to the charts and have a look at what's going on. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the daily and the monthly and the weekly just to kind of talk about that a little bit and go through this. Okay, so at the moment, so carrying on from my weekly and my weekly analysis, we've started to head down a little bit. So we've followed through on that trend, which kind of still doesn't really make sense to me, but okay, fine. If we, in terms of the dollar index, that does kind of make sense. The euro dollar is wanting to carry on the weekly trend. So it looks like currently the weekly trend is winning out because we've got a monthly, overextended, and we've got daily kind of downtrends. We've got this mishmash. We're not actually clearly clear out of the woods yet, but I would notice on the euro dollar, we didn't have a follow through on this side. We do have a potential break above a level, pull back to support, and potentially a bullish candle. So what does this mean? It means that from tomorrow, which is Thursday, if the market breaks higher and then climbs higher, we could see that would then be, for me, that daily is now starting to change trend. Overall, I should say that right now I'm really not trading actively. There's very little that I've got going on in terms of major currencies because of all this kind of wishy-washing around, which I think will resolve itself within a few days. If it doesn't, then it's definitely completely all to do with the election. So having a look at sterling. Sterling is still stuck within a range on the weekly, so it's still range bound on the daily. All of this makes complete sense. We've got contradictions between the daily, the weekly, and the monthly, and so the market is trying to figure out which one it's ultimately going to go with. So any mixture and sort of changing of trends on any of these pairs actually makes complete sense. Aussie dollar. So Aussie dollar, same thing, is pull back into the weekly. All of this really is actually about the dollar index. The dollar index, to me, let me spend a little bit of time on that and then I'll kind of carry on. There's an uptrend on the daily, there's a downtrend on the weekly, and there's sort of monthly resistance up here. And so that implies that we've got an uptrend here, downtrend there, potential resistance up here. It doesn't really just give us a lot of clarity. When we look at euro dollar, we had a downtrend on the daily, an uptrend on the weekly, and actually we were overextended on the monthly, looking to come back down to this key level. So the problem I have is what I would actually like to see happen. And it doesn't have to do this, but I'd love to see it come down here, connect with 1.15, which would be a very nice 382 retracement. It would continue the downtrend, and then it could bounce back up if it wanted to, and then we could have a bullish candle on the weekly, and then we could resume the weekly. That way everything can happen. The monthly can start trending up, the daily is done its downtrend, the weekly is corrected, done a minimum requirement, and all of this is not feeling very good for me. It's not normal behavior. So it means that, what does it mean? Do we often get abnormal behavior? Yes, we often get abnormal behavior. This is just not. This tells me that we're in for a bit of a rough ride until further notice. I mean, you have to kind of either take very short trades, or you have to wait, and eventually, maybe a week from now, we'll look back and like, okay, we know which way the market was going to go. So then, the problem with that is that just messes all the pairs, all of them up. Okay, dollar yen has now just gone into an uptrend on the daily. But it's a downtrend on the weekly, it's a downtrend on the monthly. So everything is messing with us, okay. Dollar Swissy wants to carry on its weekly downtrend, the same as euro dollar. It's overextended on the monthly, it needs to come back up, but it's messing with the uptrend on the daily. So like all of that is just very, very bad. So looking at some of the crosses might help. Euro GBP may well actually be getting ready to come back. It's come back to a monthly support level. It's producing a nice bullish weekly candle there. That might have opportunities to carry on. It's also broken through resistance on the monthly and is now effectively free to carry on up to 0.93. So Euro GBP long is a possibility. Euro Yen, I spoke about this. This was a trade call I made. Came down here, called the monthly level. Now it looks like it actually looks really nice on the monthly here. It's hit resistance, come down, found support. There's probably some bullish divergence there. It's broken back up above resistance, tapped resistance here, come back down, found support, and produced a bullish candle. So in isolation, that monthly now looks like it wants to go long now, wants to carry on going up. The weekly looks like it wants to do that. And so there could be intraday opportunities on Euro GBP up until 127. So Euro GBP, Euro Yen and Euro GBP looking nice and bullish there. Euro Swissy is screaming, stay away from me. So nothing there. Euro CAD. Hi guys. I'm sorry, it was short notice. I just like it was a spur of the moment decision to do a scan. Okay, Euro CAD. Looking more bullish than bearish, but it's definitely hitting some resistance here. So caution's not great. So far the best ones I've seen, Euro GBP, Euro Yen long. Euro Aussie is a mess. Euro Kiwi is starting to break above resistance here into a nice uptrend. So there's more room to the upside on Euro Kiwi. So more bullish on Euro Kiwi, Euro GBP, and Euro Yen. Pound Yen. Okay. No, that's a pass for me. The monthly is just too sideways. Pound Swissy. I would, no, pass. I'll tell you why, because it's got an uptrend on the daily. Last few days have been very messy, but the monthly and weekly still want to go down. And the weekly is largely sideways. So pound Swissy is a kind of a hard pass for me, I think. Pound CAD's the same. Pass. Pound Aussie, pass for the moment. Pound Kiwi, pass. This might be something. Aussie Kiwi might be trying to shift into an uptrend. Higher lows. It would have to break above 1.0850, which is a weekly resistance. So if it's red, it's a weekly resistance. Get back above that and carry on before I look at it. So that's what that is. Aussie CAD's just a mess. You can see that. It's just complete mess. Aussie Swissy. It's a mess. Range bound. Looks bad. Aussie Yen is a mess. It's a pass. QBCAD. Pass, no clear trend. Possible head and shoulders type of setup where it wants to break below that, but until it breaks below that. And look at the weekly. Look at those candles there, last 6 weeks. And look at the monthly. It's just not going on. It's just a hard pass. Kiwi Swissy, same thing. Last 4 months within a very tight range. No clear trend here. It will eventually start trending. It's just not trending now. Kiwi Yen. Hard pass. Range. Across the board. CAD Yen. Okay, so CAD Yen had pulled back into the moving averages, produced a bearish candle here, hasn't broken the low. I think that if there's a level of support here, I think that if it did start to break lower and break that monthly low, then I think we would see a trend start to take place. So what does that mean? I would really like to see 78.37, which is somewhere here, call it. Okay, maybe it's that. Maybe it's that low. Start to get broken, and then I think it will start to trend. Swissy Yen looks bullish. That actually doesn't look bad. A monthly uptrend, nice little bullish candle. That could be something. So Swissy Yen slightly bullish, not bad. I might consider that. It is kind of a bit of a messed up trend here, but that weekly doesn't look bad. It's off a really nice level of support. The monthly looks good too. Hey guys, okay, so just checking this. So gold, okay. It was really interesting, right? So I did my weekly analysis, and then Monday and Tuesday come along, and you're like, market's just going the other way. And then apparently Trump says halts the stimulus talks, and the market just corrects. And what I mean by corrects is it corrects in line with what I was anticipating. I just find that interesting. I still prefer technical analysis over fundamental any day of the week, but people can struggle with how they think that technical analysis predicts fundamental events, and I don't really think that's the case. I just think that events only become clear sometimes when a trend has already started to take place, and then people go, oh, this is what's happened. but the trend is spotted in the technicals, essentially. I mean, I need to put that into a better, I need to describe that idea a bit better. But anyway, so gold, to come back to this. So gold pulled back into the 50 fib retracement and produced a very bearish candle. But today it's trying to get bullish. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it does appear as though when the US comes online, there's a bit of a shift in the market most days. It doesn't always have to be the case, but it definitely seems to be the case nowadays. And so I want to see what happens here. But I still stand by my analysis. I still feel gold needs to come down to 1800. And what would make me bin that analysis and throw it away is if I started to see a break above 1970 up here. So in other words, it would break, start going, and actually definitely once it breaks above 2000, then obviously it's now going to try and keep going. But a healthy behavior would mean that it would come down to 1800 and go back. And so that would impact silver as well. So I'm staying away from them because they're not really bullish enough to convince me that the bull trend has returned, and they're still they're acting up. They kind of move and then drop and move and drop. So it screams kind of caution with me. Oils are similar. So oil's retracement to the upside was much more aggressive than I expected. It's unusual that, and so although I'm technical, I'm curious about if there was a fundamental explanation for that. But technically, that doesn't really make sense. We've got a monthly downtrend, weekly downtrend on these like Brent. It should be trending lower. So I'm still expecting oil to come lower. Now here's an idea. If oil comes back down under 40, then I think you can make the rational argument that it's clearly not as strong, or it's not that bullish. Like it had a really bullish rebound now. If it turns around now and just comes back down again, then I would think there's a possibility that it's almost sitting at a carry on down to $30 from that. So I am watching this week, and in the next few days, I'm watching to see if gold does drop back down. Okay, let's look on the indices. So the indices, I'm leaning bullish. I gotta say, they, despite the fact that they're acting up and they're twitchy, they just keep recovering. And if the US gets stimulus, they'll probably keep going up because the stimulus cash will just go into it, probably. So I think overall, although I am of course ready for them to drop here and there, they have to really drop down to the lows to convince me that I would. The way it works is they have to go below a certain low for the weighting to then shift more into bear mode, and then it starts to drop more aggressively. So that's why if it's not really breaking these lows or it's not hanging around, starting to push up, I'm more bullish than bearish. Russell, bullish, carrying on up. The DAX is also not looking super bearish at the moment. CAC is sideways. So for me, it's safer to potentially, if I really feel I have to participate, to trade to the upside in the most bullish markets, which is usually the US markets. Usually, not always. You go and have a look at Australia. ASIC is recovering quite well. It's now in an uptrend. Higher lows, higher highs. It's looking bullish now. So it could be that, but I will definitely focus in a general bull market to the upside. The Nikkei is still looking pretty good. Euro stock's not looking as bullish. Okay, it is in an uptrend, high lows, highs, but it's messy. So I would pass on that for intraday trading. Excuse me, the French CAC is largely sideways, not great. The DAX also not really that good. The FTSE also not great. So even though we are in the UK, most of us, I like the US markets. I really, really prefer that if I was going to take trades on that. I've marked some resistance here at 28,251. I want to see if we can get past it. Certainly, I'm more confident if we get past it, but I want my eye on that. So what does that mean? For me, that means going to the intraday stuff. So let's go look at that one on intraday, which was S&P. There we go. So you can see it's starting to trend relatively well on the 15-minute time frame. Breaking up. Here's a potential trade idea. Hypothetical. Hypothetical meaning something like that. Price breaks up, comes back to retest it, produces a bullish candle, and then that's a buy opportunity. I think that was fine. 27.9. So that would be a potential. And again, I don't trust the markets to just keep running. So I'm definitely taking profit at 1-to-1. Stop loss could be under this recent swing low or under that one as well. So that would be a potential in terms of that. ideally it would do something along the lines of something like this. And you could do that even on the 5 minute. And then there would be a bit of a buy opportunity here. So it might even be something if you bring it down to the 5 minute. You could get away with that. Something like that. That's a potential buy opportunity. If it's a really nice bullish candle, you could just put your stop loss underneath it. Risk 0.5% or stop loss below these most recent levels here of support or there. Those are dealer's choice. That's up to you. Whatever you want to go with. So I'm seeing your comments now. So Bollinger on gold is starting to test lower side. Okay, cool. Look, if like I said, if it starts going up, it starts going up. But I feel it would just be really good for it to correct. But yeah, and like I said, if it goes above a certain level, then I will shift to bullish. Okay. Brent 38.73 later in the next few weeks. Yeah, I would like to see it head low. It really should. Is the stimulus that Trump tweeted about official or Trump? So the US is in real trouble, man. I mean, they really are in terms of economy. So I'm not talking about politics now. I'm talking about economics. They're really struggling. And the HEROES Act, which was passed by the House, if I get it right, by Pelosi and them, by the Democrats, was stimulus checks and support across the board, and not so much for the big wigs because they keep pocketing the money and not trickling it down. And that was obviously dead on arrival. So Mitch McConnell was just like, screw the Democrats, we're not helping. But of course, now what's happening is there is pressure to do stimulus. The problem is that basically the Republicans want to make sure it's corporate and they get a slice of it. And the Democrats want to make sure that it goes to the main population who need it, to the people who are out of work. Unemployment. So they've got what they call stimulus checks, which is like a paycheck. Then they've got unemployment insurance, which is another thing. And so Trump has basically said it last night, said, just kill the talks, don't even do it until after the election. On some bizarre level, he thinks that by holding the mass population's feet to the fire when they're in trouble is going to make him popular. Instead, it just tanked him. Instead, he's just losing people left, right, and center. Then he suddenly panicked and he was like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, maybe I'll sign off the stimulus checks because it's got his name on. That's the psychology behind it. So they get stimulus checks and they think it's my money. And there are people, believe it or not, who actually think Trump is giving them his money. But it has his name on, which it isn't supposed to have the president's name on anyway. It's just bizarre. So he wants that, but the unemployment insurance is the big problem. So people aren't covered in that respect. And so it doesn't really make sense. There's so many reasons why, even though the Democrats want to make sure everyone's okay, it doesn't make sense for them to do this because people don't get the cover they really need, which is the health care and all that stuff. They get a stimulus check, which is really just a political tactic by Trump. So basically they have to say no. They have to say, no, we're not going to do this because it's a political tactic and we're trying to get all the good stuff for everyone. So it's and that's obviously Trump and McConnell's plan, is to make the Democrats look like they're the ones holding up the stimulus and it's not Trump. But there's no denying that Trump said kill the stimulus talks until after the election, so people can see that he's flip-flopping. And there's no denying, I think people now have raised, that awareness is raised now that clearly Trump is trying to do everything politically. Anyway, so sorry to bore you guys with it, but that's the dilemma that's going on at the moment. Yeah, exactly. He's very good at spending other people's money. It's never his own money. So I think, look, we got 2 or 3 weeks away from the election. I think that stimulus might come through in some form, but we'll have to see what it is. But yeah, any stimulus that goes through the corporate usually goes into the markets. Are the markets topped out? Let me show you a really cool website. Check this out. Check out this cool website. I think it's called... Boom, you're going to love this. This is such an amazing one. So it's called Long-Term Trends. I'm going to bring it on now. Long-term trends. And this is where you start to see some very cool stuff. There's really, really cool stuff. But we'll just bring one in here, for example. And this is the S&P PE ratio. But they've got a thing where they talk about is something in a bubble. Now, technically, we can see if it's overextended. So we can see if the monthly or quarterly charts are overextended, which is basically what a bubble is. But it's interesting to have the data also say, yes, we're kind of in a bubble now. So you can go and have a look at a whole lot of stuff at longtermtrends.net, not .com. and you'll see that they have a lot of different things. Okay, Schiller PE ratio. But a lot of these are saying that stocks are in an extreme bubble. So I know they are technically, but it's interesting to have the website confirm that as well. So that's very cool. I'll put the link into the chat box. Cool. All right, guys, that's it. So there were a couple there. There was like, Euro GBP, Euro Yen, a couple of those looking long. There is maybe the Dow, the S&P, and the Nasdaq. I might be looking for intraday opportunities to the upside. And that's pretty it. Now, obviously, if price comes back here and then just falls right through this level and just falls right down and breaks those lows in the next few hours, then I think obviously the likelihood is there is extreme volatility right now. The markets might trend for a bit, then go a bit haywire, then trend down, and then change their mind and go up. So I'm proposing within a highly volatile conditions where that's the case, I'm proposing that the market right now looks good in isolation, and that would be my setup. But even then, I think that I would not risk more than 1%. I would do less. I would do 0.5% and take, I would reduce my risk because of that. And I wouldn't take it personally. If the market goes up here and hits 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 and then turns around and just tanks, then that is explained by the general uncertainty that's going on. So if you guys are interested, and I don't want to offend anyone, if you are a massive fan of Trump, I get it. Some people like him. Most people don't, but some people do. So he's not everyone's cup of tea. I get that. Having grown up in South Africa, I recognize corruption a mile away. So most people who recognize corruption can see what it looks like in government. I've seen it. So just talking here, just generally about it, we're 3 weeks away kind of from the US election. The gap is widening. The votes are already going in. There's more people that have registered to vote in the history ever. Something like 100 times the number of people have already voted like this time than they did in 2016. So they had like 9,000 people had voted in 2016 by this time, by October the 7th. And then this time around, it's like 800,000. That's insane. So it's looking very, very, very much like legitimately Trump is going to be voted completely out. The Democrats are kicking ass. And so over the next couple of weeks, I think it's going to be normal to expect more extreme behavior, more radical market reactions as Trump tries to kind of create problems that only he can solve, but actually all he ends up doing is just creating problems. And so I think there's going to be a lot of increased volatility. And I think he's going to, because remember that he's going to jail. Like there's no doubt about it. There's about 6 different felonies that he's committed, each one with a ton of evidence. So he's, not to mention either second-degree murder or voluntary manslaughter for the deaths of people. I'm not even exaggerating, by the way. This is real stuff. But he's definitely going to jail for the rest of his life. So his idea is, I might as well give it my all because it's either this or prison. But here's where it gets really interesting. In the last few weeks, because he's infected so many people, a lot of people who were loyal to him have actually started to go, actually, I don't know why I'm doing this, because I'm sick or somebody's going to die. And if those infections keep increasing, more and more people around him are actually going to physically die. And so that's going to cause people to bail on him. And if enough people in his circle fall away from him, he won't be able to try to steal. He won't be able to steal the election. He can only steal the election if he's got Bill Barr and Mitch McConnell and everybody on his side. And if enough people fall away, he just won't be able to do that. So we live in interesting times, man. We live in interesting times. You should, if you're not into politics, you should be watching this. This is going to be, movies and TV series are going to be made about this for years to come. So let's have a look at the comments here. Yes, so while I'm here, so in answer to your questions, so let me read them all. Yeah, so there's a guy called Glenn Kirshner who's JAG. He's an ex-JAG lawyer, naval officer lawyer, and he's running he speaks on CNN and all these different things, and he knows the law. He's really good. He's uncovered conspiracy theories, and he's prosecuted murderers. He's done some incredible stuff, and he's doing all the legal stuff on what Trump's done and look at the evidence. And he knows the judges, he knows the courts and stuff. So he's giving really good feedback on things. So I really enjoy his stuff. What I was going to say. No, here's the thing. So you've made a comment. You're saying, I wonder if his tweets are to move the market and indirectly makes money out of it. I don't think so. Like what I'm saying is, I think that there are some politicians who do that. I wouldn't put me past it. I just don't think this guy's that guy. Like, his way in his mind of making money is either through deals, through property deals. That's like his way of making money. He's not known as being a stocks guy. When you look at his portfolio, it's not where he actively participates to make money. He likes to have fast cash in his pocket. It's like he understands. That's how he understands stuff. He doesn't really get the stock market. He doesn't really get military stuff either. He doesn't get war. He doesn't get that. He likes his power plays. It's when you kind of look at it, there's areas where he knows where to make money. Whereas you'll find a lot of other politicians will just make it through stuff like that. So I don't think that's really a big thing. I don't think that's what he is really good at. I think he likes the attention. I think he likes to disrupt things because he disrupts stuff that doesn't need to be disrupted. He just breaks stuff that doesn't have to be broken. I think he does that. But what I was going to say is, what I wanted to say is, for those of you who are struggling to find things, and you can't find trades. So I did a video on it. on YouTube, obviously, yesterday, which talks about, which actually what I should have done was said, is it me or is it the market? Because the topic should be, is it me or is it the market? And the solution in most cases is to go up to the daily and the weekly and the monthly and look at it. And so let me give you an example. If you look at Euro Swissy, this is just a mess, and that's been going on since July. So that anything you do in that is just a mess until eventually we get outside of that range. So in that case, that's not you, that's the market. You can't trade that. And so the key is really being able to identify that. If you look at this is also actually largely within a range, still stuck between here and here. If I go and I draw a box around it, it's going to be largely the same kind of thing. It's just generally very messy. So that's when you start to see enough of that on the daily, even if you're an intraday trader, then that's the issue. Whereas when I look at things, I look at gold. Gold overall really should be behaving a little bit better than it is. It's not really. And remember that markets can go from trending beautifully and then just start going into a coma. So gold could be doing that. And it's about the key levels as well. So my point being as well that right now, especially if you see strange things happening in gold, strange things happening in oil, strange things happening in currency, strange things happening in the indices, then chances are it's the overall market. So in other words, if multiple asset classes are all starting to lose whatever trends they have, or they're starting to trend and then stopping and then reversing, then it's almost certainly not you. Unfortunately, usually by that time, we've taken a couple of trades. So in other words, we've got in a couple of trends and then the trends are reversed and we either break even or we've lost money or we've maybe made some profit. And that's fine, because there will be times you'll make that money back. So when you have a really great win, like maybe a 5R or a 3-to-1 or whatever, that the profit you make today is to offset losses in the future. You shouldn't think about it making profits back from losses you had in the past. You don't really do that. Think about it as offsetting. So if you have a great week, then imagine that those profits are there to help reduce the hits from future losses. Anyway, it's a better mindset to have, is that's what they're there for. It's not money to spend if you're gambling. It's money that just helps reduce those losses. So, okay, so let's have a look at this. So if I look at Kiwi Yen on the 15-minute, that looks bearish. That looks like that wants to break down, which means if it does, it'll probably hit a bit lower. Okay, that looks like that wants to break lower. There's a bit of a sort of bearish move on the 1 hour. The 4 hour is ranging. So now you get into this problem where you're a bit sort of range bound and your daily is actually a downtrend. So it might be hitting lower, but it's just, everything's just a bit iffy. So, just a bit iffy. So yeah, if that is the case, I get it, it's frustrating if you want to, look, remember that you really only have to trade, let's just say that if you wanted to do 5 to 10% per month, you might actually be able to do that in 1 week. If all the markets were trending, you could be able to do it. So what you have to remind yourself is that you only need a few days of really good trending markets to make the money. Like, granted, you don't have to have it every day. So I get the pressure, but if the market isn't there, you can't force it out of the market. And by doing that, you might actually end up giving more money back, and then you're further back than you would be. So it's actually worth your while you'll find your headspace is better, your confidence is better, if you consciously go, I got to walk away from this because this market is toxic. It's like a toxic person. I just got to walk away from them. You can come back later in the day. You don't even have to go away for long. Just give it and just step away for an hour or two, or watch videos, watch other stuff. Those are the really cool things. Yeah, he is the embodiment of fake it till you make it. I'll give him that. He suffers from something called this is what it is. Okay, so let me give you an explanation as to why I am the way I am about Trump. I had an ex-girlfriend years ago, and I couldn't understand what was going on with her. She was gaslighting me. I'd never had that before, never experienced that before. So if you don't know what gaslighting is, you need to YouTube it. But she was messing with my head, and I didn't know what was going on. Eventually, I broke up. I cut loose. I was like, something is just not right. And then I spent a couple of years reading, like I was on forums, and eventually I was describing stuff, and eventually it directed me towards what's called NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder. So you have a spectrum, which is psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissistic personality disorder. And it's on a spectrum called antisocial personality disorder. So they have very distinct differences. So someone who's a sociopath is not a psychopath. Psychopaths generally employ violence. They have certain other things. They know the difference between right and wrong. They just don't care. And so they carry some similar elements, but also some distinct differences in their behavior. So NPDs are generally not violent themselves. They're incredibly good at manipulation, and they are incredibly good at creating a false reality. Like, it's all they know how to do. Here's the thing. So this is what I learned, because I read all these books on it. I read the diagnostic manual, the DMS or the DSM. I know about this stuff from first-hand experience, plus I read up a lot about it. But here's the difference. So I spotted all the behaviors, and there's like 60 different characteristics they have. And my ex, completed about 50 of them. Literally, I went through it and I was like, yep, she's done that, she's done that, she's done that. And so I classified her as that. Now, Trump had the same thing. So I spotted it by fluke because I know about it in real life. So only people who've ever spotted it know about it. And the reason they don't know anything about NPDs, there's very little information on them, is because they don't think there's anything wrong with them. So they never go for help. They never go for help. So therefore, there's very little information on them. But now, because the whole world has been exposed to one, we will now believe that they exist, and we'll be able to spot them. So this is a good thing for the planet in one respect, because it's exposed a very rare condition that's quite rare, but it's made it like there's evidence of it worldwide, and everybody now will be able to spot it and they are drawn, by the way, to positions of power. So you might find it in politicians, but now when we see another politician that's behaving this way, we'll be able to spot it. But he's a malignant one, and that's a different level. So he's a malignant narcissist. It's actually not just narcissist, NPD, which means he's extra vicious, he's extra violent, he's extra within that range. He wouldn't necessarily, like a serial killer, look to kill people. That's not it. But he's extra, like, hateful is the better way of putting it. And so he does extra harm. And part of it is it's magnified by the amount of power and support he's been given. So when you read up about it, you start to realize it's very normal. But you have to understand. So this is all I was going to say here. It's not his fault. He can't be fixed. No amount of, maybe chemicals might help. Certain therapy might help him, but it won't take it off. The wiring is broken. His wiring is broken, and it's actually not his fault. Almost all of that comes from his dad or his mom. So something in his formative years, between the ages of 2 and 6, when there's something goes wrong, it can break the wiring, just like a psychopath serial killer. You can't unbreak that wiring. But you can teach them some self-awareness so that they can learn to manage themselves. But that learning to manage themselves only comes into play if they care about themselves. They don't care about anyone else. They care about themselves. They can feel fear. They can feel, hate. They can panic. But it's hard for them to feel empathy for other people. They don't have the wiring. So when people go, I don't understand, people are still struggling to understand how he can't react the way we do, and they don't understand everything he does is his fault, but the way that he is the way he is not his fault, if that makes sense. So I don't really have empathy for him. I really believe he needs to spend his life in jail because he's done the damage, but I also understand that I feel sorry for the dude in that his whole life is like this, and he needs adoration from people like we need air. Like, he needs that because his identity is attached to that. But he's his own worst enemy. Anyway, that's it. I'll leave you. I don't want to bore you on that. I just thought it was really, really interesting. Yeah. She's still in my circle of friends, which made it really interesting. So, yeah, because I know people are protective. I've seen that. I've seen it before, But anyway. There we go. Yeah, NPD. And that's the thing, because we say narcissist, we say someone's a narcissist. We think that when we say someone is NPD that it's not that serious, but actually the clinical definition of it is very different. We all have the potential to be a little bit antisocial, like on that range, but we'll never really go beyond a certain amount. Like there's certain things morally and ethically we won't do. But if the wiring is off, you tend to get certain results. And there's certain things that produce a psychopath. You could produce a psychopath. You need a distant mother, withholding mother, non-present father. Certain things, if you do that, you can alter. And during certain formative years, you'll have a psychopath. Like, it's amazing. They can actually, if you watch Mindhunter, which is Mindhunter on Netflix, is the story of the origin of the profiling of the FBI department. They start to talk about stuff like that. Anyway, it's just fascinating. So, so I'm in the UK. I'm in London at the moment. I'm in Bromley, South Bromley. It's a nice day today, but it's been raining for like 5-6 days with some patches of sunlight. And I trade from here. Although I grew up in Cape Town, I worked in Joburg. I moved to London. So that's where I'm. So I'm here. And my intention is to continue to trade and do business from the UK. And obviously I have family, I go back for holidays and stuff if I do, but I want to settle somewhere warm. I like the Mediterranean. I love that warmer climate. So that's really the goal, is to be in Spain or Portugal or somewhere like that. Yeah, Dreon, I think you and I had a chat and stuff like that. And so the thing is, she's still within my circle of friends. So I don't really want to make an active, but the interesting thing was I took a break from that circle of friends for a couple of years. When I came back, they had worked out. They don't know what it is, and I haven't spoken to them about it, but they had worked out something wasn't right. They were like, they'd all eventually spoken to each other and worked out that she'd been messing with all of them individually. It was really good. But the point is that she can't help it. She can't. Anyway, we still talk, but it's very interesting. Because apparently 1% of the population is psychopathic. Okay, so that means 1 in 100 people is a psychopath. But not all psychopaths are serial killers. So they are. So you can say, I don't know what the percentage is for NPD and various things, but they exist. They are obviously in our society. The thing is that it's hard for us to accept that somebody we know could fall into that category. But yeah, it's interesting. Cool. Oh, okay, Ashford. All right, great. Yeah, I mean, I've been here 10 years now, so it's interesting to me. Yeah. So I've been chatting a lot. Yes, exactly. So CEOs, it's a good environment. It attracts them. Government attracts a lot of sociopaths because lack of accountability. So if you are one of those and you want to operate in that, if you're, let's say, predator, you want to operate in a place which is good for predators. And government's great. There's no accountability. You can get away with a lot of stuff and you don't, and so we've got this culture. But I think there's a big shift in the consciousness today globally. I think that in the past, when we allowed politicians to lie a little bit, because you're like, well, all politicians lie, we allowed them to get away with that. I think we've got to a point now where we're like, okay, enough now, because like, you serve us and you have to do, the world is not getting better. So I think we've reached a really good place where in some ways where we've realized, okay, things are slipping a bit. When you allow someone too much leeway, they tend to kind of take it for granted. And I think politicians in the UK as well, and obviously in South Africa, we've all seen it. Politicians now have got a little bit too much power and they're really meant to be civil servants. So I think if we can get, the reason it's so important is there's also an increase, I don't know if any of you guys have seen, in far-right extremism around the world. If you look it up on your own, you'll find out that Germany's biggest danger at the moment is also far-right extremism. They've got a massive problem with it. We've got, QAnon, conspiracy theories. Look, conspiracy theories happen. They've existed in the past, but at the same time, the earth isn't flat. Like, there's some things that might be a conspiracy. Kennedy's assassination is certainly dodgy, but the earth isn't flat. You can buy a camera and you can take a balloon and you can find out for yourself. You can send it up. So the trick is, how do we determine what is a conspiracy theory and what isn't? The problem is that when these days people just make up stuff. In fact, the internet is rife with people who are good at making up stuff. The skill they've developed is to mix in a bit of truth and a Photoshop and this and that anyway. So it makes it really hard for us to be able to do that. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's a good chat. We should do a Zoom, and then everyone can just hop in, on cameras and microphones and have the chat. So I stand by my analysis to go back to this, because I could chat all the time, and we'll save some for tomorrow. But I stand by my analysis. I'm happy to do a Zoom, maybe Friday even, maybe do that. But yeah, so I stand by it. I think the cross pairs might offer some trending opportunities by accident, because the dollar is doing what it's doing and everything else is doing what they're doing, but the crosses are almost a byproduct of what happens, aside from that. They might the pound doesn't mean to strengthen against the Canadian dollar, it just does, for example. So that could be an opportunity. And I think also this could be a really good time to run through commodities. Look at other commodities. If you have access to things like lumber or anything else, see if there's anything else that is trending. On my list here, I've got, so what have we got here? So let's just run through them. So, okay, so gasoline is now trying to climb higher. Sorry, crude is now trying to climb higher. Let's see what else is trending nicely. Okay, it's too thin. Cocoa can be really good. It can trend really well. If you look at the daily, it's trending lower. So cocoa could be something that you could look at. Milk, too thin, obviously, in terms of that. Live cattle, it's just too mishmashy. But feeder, there we go. Okay, there we go. So feeder cattle, if you've got that, that looks good. That's really nice liquid, all going in the same direction. So another reason why I'm a big fan of commodities is because it's not as influenced by the news, potentially, as currencies might be. And I know you've asked me before, do I watch the news for the currencies? I'm saying you can get a spike on the lower time frame because of a news tweet or whatever, tweeting, but it's not... I don't think that the news drives the market. But when I look at commodities, they can just tick away and they can be really, really nice. So, and nobody else is watching them. So, also one thing I want to comment here for price action lessons. So you'll see here that the angle of price action. So here's the angle going here, then angles here, that's fine. But this is where there's a bit of an issue. So now we go from this high to this high, and then we're kind of here. So to me, I see price picks up pace and slows down. And usually when that's the case, that means that it's overextended on the weekly and it's potentially now going to take a retracement. It's potentially losing steam. So there you can see the weekly now starting to slow down a bit. If I go back to the daily, is there any divergence on the daily? And there is. Well, a little bit. It doesn't look so bad. Might consolidate and carry on. But otherwise, price might want to come back down to these levels. So just thought I'd show you that. Cool. Palladium. If Palladium's going again, go for it. Now that it's there. Okay. Corn. It's bullish. It's a bit thin on the ground. Canola. Okay, I only have daily data on that. Interesting. Daily data. So, like cotton, I've only got daily data. I don't have intraday data on that, because obviously I just don't. Pro Realtime is sponsoring my data. I think I mentioned that before. Wheat is climbing. So there we go. So wheat looks good. Nope. Obviously not tradable. Sugar. Sugar looks bullish, man. So sugar's got... It's all daily data. But sugar could be good. Orange juice. Orange juice looks like it wants to head lower, but it's coming into a level of support. Soybean. Soybean's looking bullish. Soybean meal. These are good, and they're not torn between two different economies. So currencies, Euro versus GBP, CAD versus yen. Nah, just supply and demand. So definitely worth a consideration, I think. I'll bet. Economic downturn, everything addictive. Absolutely. Coffee, all those kinds of things as well. Actually, that leads me to the bonds. Let's just have a look at bonds. What's going on with those? I'm looking at the daily now. So I'm just looking at bottom right. Bottom right. Looking to see what's going on there. They're all heading lower. That's interesting. I mean, it's not very interesting. It's just an observation. I would generally expect them to climb, but they're not really climbing at the moment. I saw some really interesting stocks as well, if you have access to those. Anyway, I saw some interesting ones. You'd have to go and see what's trending really well. If you're not... Look, you need commodities at a minimum. I think you need indices and currencies. But if you can add stocks, if you can trade them as well, then I think that's a bonus. Just running through. All I'm looking for, guys, is liquidity. Don't want to see much gapping, and I want to see them all going in the same direction, ideally. So this isn't bad. Costco's not bad. But like this is a hard pass for me. It's just a mess. It's a hard pass. If there's very little gapping, like this is great. So look at that. So that's eBay. So eBay's got some shorting opportunities on it. Yeah, I love Pro Real Time. It's very cool. GGPL. GPL? What's GGPL? GPL. No. I don't have that. Okay. Anyway, so where was I? eBay. Okay. Equinox. Looks bullish. Great Land Gold. Okay, I'll have a look at that. So yeah, guys. So when you're finding, if you're not finding it easy, this is the general rule of thumb. If you're not finding it easy and everything is messing with you, either take a break or take a break from the instruments you're looking at. Just go somewhere else. Just go somewhere else. Go look at other stuff, and then you'll kind of get a sense of those things. As soon as I get into that place, I go straight up to the daily again. I'm like, what happened? Because once in a blue moon, I get caught in the lower time frames, and the daily. Even though I was, long on the daily, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. But there are times when I can get caught in a mess on the lower time frames, and then I look back and I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have been there. Okay, I'm just looking for anything that might stand out, and then I'll go to the Great Land Gold Mine thing. Do that quickly. So let's have a look at this one. I want to show you something here. Okay, so the 15-minute looks like it's heading lower. The 1 hour's got lower highs, lower lows. The 4 hour looks like it's coming back into the moving averages. So this is where it looks really good to me. This is the first time frame I see where it looks pretty good. And the daily looks a little bit of a mess. But the 4 hour looks somewhat decent. The only thing I would comment on with the price action, just an observation, is notice how there's a bit of exhaustion here. And then almost immediately there's a bit of exhaustion here. So I would say that roughly around the 200 level is a bit of a struggle. But if that wasn't the case, I'd be like, okay, I'll wait for this to go long on the 4 hour. I wouldn't worry about the lower time frames. Okay. Cool. Let me have a look at Great Land Gold. It's supposed to be Great Land Gold. Is it? No. Great Land Gold. GHG. GGP. There we go. Oh, the ordinary share price. Well, this is the right one, is it? That looks like that wants to climb higher. Nice bit of a bullish thing. Is that right? Is that the right one? GGP, it looks like it. Yeah, looks good. That looks like the one. NASDAQ. Okay, I don't have it. Alright, don't know what that is. Yeah, so I would do that, and I was looking at that, like some of the UK stuff doesn't look fantastic. I mean, shorting opportunities, absolutely, if you can. Those are considerations anyway. Cool. I think I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for putting up with my ramble, but I appreciate it. Good chat. And yeah, thank you. So I'll set up the recording, I'll stop the stream, and then I'll see if I can do the same thing tomorrow and Friday. Maybe Friday we do a Zoom. We'll talk about it tomorrow if you want. But yeah, otherwise, good luck with that. And if you've got any questions, I'll see you then. Thanks.